Good morning, everyone. Sorry. Probably should have threw my keys up there before I unmuted everything. Welcome, welcome. Hopefully everyone is able to rest up, get ready for the day ahead, all that fun stuff. As always, on the left side of the screen there, make sure to read through the Live Trader Morning Prep PDF. Very important to go through and understand everything that is inside there. Still a little bit sick. Still have a nasty cough. Throat's still a mess. So I apologize if I cough in your ear a couple times or have any other chest or throat related issues. I try to mute it as much as I can so that you're not dealing with it, but just keep that in mind. Along with that, just a quick note to keep in mind. Before we jump on in the YouTube side of things, the broadcast does have between a 5 and 30 second delay, depending on where you're logging in from, of course. That can definitely impact the timeliness of what I may be talking about at the time, so keep that in mind. I just wanted to give a shout-out, take a second to give a shout-out to our latest members that joined overnight, yesterday afternoon, etc. Thanks so much for the support. I'm pumped to have you on the SSFTG family. If you aren't a member yet, you do have a few different options available for you to check if you are looking to further your trading education and career. Here on YouTube, you can check out the join button below the stream. YouTube family, gain access to the extended hours trading room, which continues the morning session from 10 until we end, 10 to the end. Every member also gains permanent access to the Discord chat server, and of course, get the awesome badge next to your name to show your support here on YouTube. To understand what we're doing here and our trading approach in the room, look no further than the Day Trading Academy. This is no small PDF that you're going to finish in an afternoon. You're looking at 19 plus hours of course material, including homework, reviews, study guides, etc. So something that you're definitely going to have to tuck in for. And then finally, the big one, the VIP. Also including everything else along with it, VIPs also have exclusive permanent access to the non-delayed stream covering the entire morning session from 9 until we end to ensure that you're on the fastest connection possible and that you don't miss a beat along the way. Alongside that, VIPs also have access to our monthly VIP webinars, private VIP events, one-on-one scheduling access, all kinds of cool stuff. So whether you're here for the very first time or you're a VIP veteran over on the Zoom stream, welcome. I'm glad to have you trading alongside with me today looking at these crazy markets. Let's take a look at some news, see what's going on this morning, take a look at some charts. All right, don't forget to grab your morning DP levels as I posted for you this morning. Got all those covered for you there. So make sure you got those, get that out of the way. All right. Starting off on the NASDAQ first. I mean, it's just not doing anything. You know, yesterday we had that gigantic pile driver of a move to the downside. Did end up bouncing back up about halfway, found resistance, and we've gone kind of sideways since then. Yesterday did end up being a break even. I actually took a small loss on it, but there was several opportunities to get out at break even on that. I wasn't patient enough. Could have waited a little bit longer, but I didn't want to go back down again. I took it at a small loss. I'll go over that in a second. But as far as the NASDAQ is concerned, really, it's not doing much. I mean, we're cycling off the lows. We just had a higher low. Maybe, you know, there's a little bit of trapping or something going on here with that higher low there. There's definitely a few things to keep our minds on. But as it stands, we'll see. What happened to my... Hang on. Why isn't that working? My drawing tool is not working. That's a bummer. Well, whatever. All right, so as far as the NASDAQ is concerned, I mean, really, we've got resistance above the highs that are just ahead of the 750s, 760s. We've got support underneath us at around the 620s. If the market does want to fall a little bit lower, that previous pullback, which obviously was a pullback now in hindsight, if we look at the overall move, it would make sense to see a pullback area still down to those 430s. It just hasn't gone that far yet. I don't know if it will, but we'll see. Either way, I mean, this is looking pretty nasty. I do not like the fact that that high came on that huge little, that I say huge little, but that little poke above the highs and then massive reversal down. That's huge. That's a big problem. We'll see what they want to do. Right now, it's still kind of range bound. S&P, similar situation. Obviously, we've got some bullishness coming into the S&P with higher lows, higher highs. It's still really deep pullbacks into this move, and all things considered, it just makes more sense to buy low, sell high, stay the heck out of the middle. The overall movement that we've got going on to the upside has had an undertow going on for ages now. We just haven't had that deeper pullback. And if we look at the context of a deeper pullback from the bottom, that first reversal came off of an L3. Typically, those reversals off L3s, if they're good, are going to hold off of L1s and 2s. It held off of an L1, held an L1, finally got an L2 pullback, and then ripped all the way up to the highs again. Get another dip into L1. They held there for a really long time, and then broke higher again. L1 again, broke higher again, and now we're in L1 again. So, I mean, realistically, buyers are really aggressively buying these L1s, and they're not letting off the gas pedal. But if they are able to get a deeper pullback, then we can look for that deeper L2 down in the 4170s to 4160s. That's going to be the hot spot from there. Will it get there? I don't know. Would I love it to? Yeah. But we'll have to see how it wants to play ball. Over on gold, mostly sideways here as well, but we do have at least some kind of back and forth distance at least. We've got that attempted break above the highs, which was a very big failure. And when it rolled back inside, this lower high right there didn't quite tag that area and then fell off. And that aggressive fall off was followed up with a failure to make a second leg down. That's really bad for the sellers. If sellers are going to take this lower, what's happening here? Now, this could very realistically be a rally up for buyers who are maybe buying on the pullback to get out of break even. If we look at the original impulse, we can see their break evens would be up here. Now, as we increase price and go further forward with these higher lows, etc., then we can see that the average was very obviously built to the downside lower. So if the market can make it back up here, this is the first objective into the 1910s where buyers are going to be looking to take some profit off. That would be returning back to their original entry point and, maybe taking some extra off to cover the commissions and such. Looking good from the bull side, but the buyers would like a little bit of a pullback. If crude oil can get a pullback here as well, I mean, we've got some really nice bullish continuation to the upside. It is Wednesday, it's inventory day, but keep in mind, Monday, holiday, that throws things off too. So we'll get into the news in just a second. Yep. But with this bullish kind of spike and channel-ish formation going on, what we really need to kind of keep our eyes on is what happened at the top and what's happening at the bottom and how well they're actually responding to these zones. Typically, when you're kind of forecasting out on these wedges, channels, etc., you got to see, are they actually holding it or are they breaking through it? And this one, I mean, it looks like they tried to poke their head above it a little bit, but I mean, it did fall right back down again and held the highs pretty nicely. So if it is going to pull back down, then realistically, this would show a pretty significant sign of resistance at the top. We're running into some pressure off of the 69s or 68.75s. And if it is going to pull back a little bit lower, what better spot than going down to that previous congestion at around 67.50, which is also right back at the lows of the channel, which we can see has been supporting all the way up. It just makes a lot more sense there. So we'll see if they can get a little bit of a deeper pullback. 67.50s, 67.60s, that's the zone of interest for now on crude. Looking at the inventories and what is expected from that side of things. On the economic calendar, today the only news that we have really is, nothing. Remember, Monday was a holiday, so that pushes everything off. You'll notice API is today, and that's expected, we don't have an expectation, but the previous is negative 0.439. Inventories are tomorrow, so that's not something that you have to worry about. And in fact, as far as the news calendar is concerned, we don't have anything to worry about, which is kind of a bummer. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's not, I don't know. We'll see. All things considered, though, there's no news, not even inventories that we have to worry about today. That'll be tomorrow. Over on the euro, we had that really nice rally to the upside. Big V bottom off of the lows, and a lot of times those V bottoms will look to double themselves up. And in this case, it only made it to about 1.5, so about 50-60% over the top, and then rolled all the way back down again. Not very decisive. And if we look at the opposite side of things, that could very realistically be an L5 hold that's now rotated down to where? In L1. That's a major objective for a lot of sellers who are holding these L5s. I wasn't really interested in shorting up here personally, but if sellers did, this is a major objective. And knowing that a lot of sellers are taking profit here, this is also a zone, given how aggressively V-bottom-esque that was, and how strong we have support across here. So there's also a chance for these earlier sellers who may have gotten suckered into that drive down to get out of break even. There's a lot of things of interest down here, especially if we can start getting down into the 21,600s. Over on Bitcoin, mostly sideways, not really doing a whole lot of anything. We've got a potential wedge kind of grinding its way up, maybe across the highs here. There's just not much going on. It seems kind of maybe the calm before the storm, who knows, but just kind of stagnating around 37,000. Buyers really need to get this to break above the highs. They really need to get it up there really bad. Ethereum, same thing. We've got to break above those highs. If they can't break those 2750s, we'll say, they're going to have a tough time. Might have to be a deeper pullback. So far, off of the lows, that is an L3. They almost got the L4. And a lot of times when they get close like that, if it can't quite make it up here, that quick flush down usually lands right in that spot. Maybe a catastrophic flush down to 2160s, 2150s. Could be really nice on Ethereum. All right. Over on the NASDAQ, looking at the start on the daily and kind of seeing what's going on from this perspective. We've got a lot of attempted POC top weighting going on, and that was the big concern that we were talking about last week, and how we were building and then it kind of fell off and volume just died inside here. There wasn't anything happening around the 400s to 500s, just nothing. And that's because it didn't spend a whole lot of time there. But when we started building this top-weighted POC, we have that very obvious three-pointed structure, 1, 2, 3, on the volume nodes, and a POC at the top. That's a very obvious concern that sellers are trying to get this to push lower. And the big break point was breaking above those highs at 14,064, and they couldn't do it. They double-topped, on the micro phase at least, at around 14,064, and then cycled all the way back down again. On that pullback, then bottom weighting the POC at the lows and then cycling back higher. Remember, before I was looking for a pullback down to where the POC was in the 850s. Well, they missed it by just a little bit after they shifted that POC, and now, realistically, if it does come back up here, this is going to be a lot harder for buyers. Now they've got to work through all of this sell-side resistance, which has proven itself. Not to say that the market can't continue higher, and this does still look incredibly bullish on the daily chart, but there's a lot of fight that's going to be waiting for them at around the 13,900s to 14,000s. We'll see if they want to just do a one-hit KO and blast through it, or if they're just going to fall flat on their face. Over on the 60-minute chart, zooming in a little bit closer, we can really see this congestion that's going on. Similar situation on the daily, just zoomed into the hourly, right? Same thing. You can see, right? I mean, huge cluster of volume that's being built up here and a massive POC shift on the more recent high. It's obvious sellers are trying to get this mark to go down. The big thing that we really need to pay attention to, though, while the sellers are trying to pressure this down, is are they actually staying on the right side of things? Right? They were able to make it down to a new low, but they weren't able to close underneath it. They barely were even able to stay under there for too long before it rejected right back up. That doesn't add a whole lot for sellers. That's not going to make sellers super pumped about wanting to be short here. But if we see another move back up towards those 700s and then a strong rejection back down with a thrust through, that adds a lot of confidence for the sellers. So we can definitively see sellers are building positions here. And it might be buyers taking profit, it might be new shorts building positions, whatever it is, they're sell orders. And they're pressuring the market down, and it's holding the market down at the moment underneath 700s. That's kind of the break point. If they start cracking above the 700s, getting above 73 especially, with more than just a wick like they did last time, that would add a lot of context for a bullish continuation higher. Right now, though, oh man, it feels like we're right on the cusp. They're staring off the edge of a cliff right now, deciding whether or not their parachute's packed well enough to jump. This thing is just, it's right there, very close. On the 15-minute chart, we can really see that congestion that's been going on. I would still love to get that pullback down into the 430s. Not so sure it's actually going to happen, but if we're looking at the volume from the top to the bottom, the initial POC cluster had a huge shift at 750. That's not the first time that we've had issues with 750. 750 is a recurring nightmare of his own. Well, it rejected back off of it again, further adding to the way that it's been acting lately. On this drive down, we have this huge move lower, but they failed to get another low. So if we continue this a bit further forward to these higher lows, we can very definitively see we've got a POC shift that the market is just trying to get above. It's very early. It's not to say that the buyers can't succeed here. They certainly can. But, I mean, they've got a lot of work cut out for them yet. I'm not ready to jump on the full-blown bull wagon yet, although it is definitely tilting in the right direction. And as far as the... do I have my execution shown? There. The setup that happened yesterday, I was looking at that continuation. I really... Hang on. Ha! I got it to work. Fantastic. Okay. Sorry, I've been trying to get that to work all morning. On the way down here, we had this initial bounce. I was looking for a continuation, but it didn't really want to give it up. We had that really nice slide down at the open back to the Euro session highs, buying in. When it started failing down, that was the point to potentially break out and exit with a small stop. It also came back and allowed small losses. We were talking about those too. At the time, I had bought into it. That was actually slightly positive territory for a minute, and then dove right back down again. Once that started happening, we were already long on the S&P, so I didn't really want to pile drive too much into the NASDAQ, so spread the orders out. The next zone was at the major cluster zone of support at the bottom of Euro, and it just hammered through that as well. I was not expecting that. So I had a larger ad down at the bottom to draw my average down for a potential exit, and I had my exit resting here, and they missed me. Yesterday, what a frustrating trade on that move, and cycled all the way back down again. So when they started cycling down, that was kind of what we were talking about right at the end of the day. Time to hit the E-stop, hit the brakes. This thing needs to get out. You either accept the fact that you're just going to have to take the ding here, or you can average down to try to get out for the final bounce. In Discord, we were talking about how this is the last-ditch effort for the bulls here. And it was an aggressive scale in for an exit at break even. It's really, and actually for me, it was a slight loss. You can see my exits were quite far down. I tried a little bit more in the end, but I couldn't get anything going. Yesterday was a really frustrating day. Oh well, it happens. It's part of it. We go into today, and we can see that, well, not much has happened. We haven't really moved away from here. The volume on everything is relatively low, all things considered. And in the way that things are moving, we've got the Asian and Euro session stacked, but not just stacked, like almost equal in terms of size. Barely any difference between the two. It's not very frequent that we see that kind of stacking going on. So it's a little bit of a concern of, hey, is this just going to continue the sideways range? Or, like we saw in the bigger picture, was this that final trap underneath the base that they needed to spark this thing to the upside? They do have short-term higher highs. It just needs that bigger one. At the moment, looks like it's reversing off an L4. Ooh, they almost got the L5, but it is an L4 reversal off the lows. So if they can break above the highs, I would really like to see them get above Euro session, maybe land up into like the 710s. I feel like that would add enough confidence for the buyers to want to buy the next pullback. Then the next pullback looking for an L1, L2 continuation of the trend. Got the open around the corner here in about 8 minutes. We'll see what they want to do, but jeez. We are coming into a pretty wild tipping point. A lot of potential volatility waiting. All right, sorry about that. In a little while, I'll be getting my my groceries delivered, so if my dog freaks out, I'll try to mute it on time. So far, there's not really... Man, there's not really enough to even do on the 500 tick to measure up what could potentially happen today. You know, I mean, the back and forth that we've got going on, there's almost nothing here. You have to go to like a 55 tick just to see any kind of potential structure. From a 55 tick perspective, which is incredibly fast, you'd think, we've got an L5 reversal off the lows that held in an L2. We've got continuation back up. They're trying to hold off the L1. They were successful, rolled back up into another L1 that they're trying to hold right now. So you can see in the really, really micro phase, you've got these zones of support here in the L1, L2 area that are very interesting. And if we can get a two-legged correction back down to an L2, right back to Euro session highs, whoo. Let's see what kind of risk reward we can get in this bad boy. Two to one still fits up to the highs. I'm going to look for more of a strict style swing long, 655.75. Upside objectives are back up to 671. Primarily because we're dealing with the open, and like we saw yesterday, the open can be expensive, and I just don't feel like dealing with that today. We'll see if we can get a little bit of a dip back. Ow. 4 minutes until the open. Got 9:28 is going to be the next big moving time. That's that drop dead period for the at the open modifications. Kind of curious. Potential for a larger 2-to-1 with like microscopic risk now, since the measured move is right there. $9.28 around the corner. We'll see if we can get a little bit of a pullback. Looking for, at minimum, a 2-to-1, but given the size of the stop, we should be able, if it is going to bounce there, aggressively at least, it should be able to go more than 2-to-1. That's the first objective, though. $9.28 hits, a little bit of fluctuation there, but not much. Bitcoin and Ethereum climbing pretty aggressively. See what they're able to accomplish going into the open here. One minute until the open. Looking at potential secondary areas just in case it does end up breaking a little bit lower. Wish that POC was a little bit further down. They did end up modifying it though. I'd rather have it just a touch further, which means that that entry point isn't quite good enough. Now I wonder, although the POC is up there, if we can get that average just a bit further. There we go. All right. Sheesh. Really fast snap down. Took the entry, stopped out one of them, jumped up, and then swept back down and hit the next one. Jeez. That's the open volatility for you. Like I said, I don't really feel like dealing with having to build in through open again. It just gets a little too slippy. We'll see if they can get a slightly better pullback down to the L3 now, 47.25. And remember, this looks like it's moving incredibly fast. I'm on the 55 tick right now. Okay, this is sped up way faster, just so we can see some of these microstructures. If you're looking at the bigger picture on the 500, there's almost no candles, which is why I'm looking at the 55. I don't really feel like dealing with that much risk on this one either. It's too good of a spot. If it's not going to bounce there, I don't really want it. And again, the only reason I'm looking for longs here is primarily because we're looking at a potential reversal off of the lows of that wider range on the 15. And it's cycling very nicely for that higher low continuation. Stop me out to the tick on that second one, too. If they can pick up a little bit more volume, then maybe we'll sweep into the 500 tick again. Maybe we'll bump this up to like a 125 or something. The volatility is just so quiet today. From the wider perspective, I was going to say, the measured move doesn't really fit my entry now, but where it is here, that fits a lot better. That's perfect. And now you're making it harder. And they went through the high. All right, well, vindictive SOB. Oh, well, I gave it a shot at the open, but I just didn't want to deal with the volatility. That one took me out to the tick. Well, you're welcome, whoever got that one. Jeez. Good continuation to the upside. They do end up holding the L2 in a slightly vindictive way, but looks like we're starting to get a bit more volume. Let's, oh God, the 500 still has like no candles. 55's a little too fast. What about a 125? Okay, that's a little better. All right. Getting good amounts of volatility coming in here on this continuation move to the upside. Gigantic twin reversal at the highs. Yikes. As far as this overall move goes, likely POC down in euro. Yep. right there. And on the rally to the upside, really didn't break out until this low. Oh, man, they hit a brick wall up there. 684 said nope. Secondary zone of interest would be back down into the 666s. Levels. Ominous. I remember that from yesterday. Nice strong bull bar back up, but given the context, really difficult to want to be a buyer here. Got a nice little dip underneath that previous bull bar. That giant brick wall of volume up there. And they're still holding it. That doesn't help anybody on the bull side. Major zone of interest, huge volume cluster at 665. S&P on the 15, on the 60 minute rather, almost bear engulfing candle. Hey, how's it going? Bulls are trying to get that continuation to the upside. 684 is the challenge point. This bull bar they just plotted here, well, they couldn't get above it. First 5-minute volume is done. Let's see what's going on there. On the S&P, it's at 202. And on the NASDAQ... Oh man, they tried to get that one up there, but it actually wasn't. 5475 is the volume node. I thought for sure they'd have it up on top. Rejection back down. If sellers are going to try to pressure, this is a really nice spot for them to try to do it. It's lower risk. Very nice bull bar to the upside. If we can get a little bit of a dip underneath the 80 quarters. The thing is, we're rejecting off of that 684. And they can't get above it. That's a huge problem. Yeah, you can see. All right, see if we can get a little bit of a dip down to that 665. That's where a lot of shorts potentially got short above those previous highs and just got railroaded. Nice little scalp pop back to the upside. I got a terrible fill on that first contract. I hit buy bid and it popped up too fast. But was able to at least get a couple more on that secondary thrust. Nice little scalpers push again. Not really much more than that. Starting to shift to the downside, and very obviously the POC cluster at the top and the failed new high. That's a lot of information that the market just gave us. Be very careful when you see that kind of action. Starting to look a lot like yesterday. You remember yesterday? I do. It wasn't very fun. Now, a lot of times when you have that move, there'll be a POC somewhere in the middle of this, even through all of this volume. They weren't able to do that yet, but you can see there's a lot of volume that traded there. POC still at the top. Coming back down, the next zone of support is going to be down in those 54.75s. From the larger perspective, we've got the rotation off the L5 that gave up into an L2, another continuation back up into an L2, If we can get a rep L2, that would be the third time around that it's doing it. But this time, we're kind of under the moving average. We've had an undertow going into these previous highs. There's some challenges where it might make more sense to see like an L3, maybe even an L4, given the way that, you know, such a nice little trap underneath that could be fantastic. But pretty early so far. We'll see what they want to do. S&P is not looking too healthy. More bear side momentum to the downside. And we almost have the second candle of the day. So if it makes it up to 202, I'm definitely interested on the short side. The only way to get it to work for your end or for your target though is at 202.50. Can't get away with anything. Yeah, I don't want my target right on settlement. That just seems like a death wish. All right, 202.50 it is. Now, as far as the S&P is concerned, on this overall move that we've got going on, I mean, we're right back down to that same zone at these lows. And that's kind of the concern of wanting to do more than, much more than just a scalp here. I'm definitely on the side of scalp when it comes to the S&P. I think it just makes more sense given the current market situation. But let's see if they can get a little pop up to those 250s. We're already seeing the sellers come in above the previous bear bar. That's the concern. Ugh, I might not get a fill. NASDAQ's falling back down again. Come on now. They missed my entry by a tick and then dropped like 2 points away from it. All right, I'm gonna have to consider it scratched. I got missed. I tried getting the better entry, and well, it meant that I didn't get an entry. It happens sometimes. I'll wait to see what this bull bar wants to do. Just to see how they want to respond. A strong bull bar response closing back above 2 could allow buyers to try to reverse this higher on the S&P. NASDAQ bulls are trying to come back in, and now the market has made its way back above the 82 quarters. Give me a quick little snap down here. Nice little snap down. Bulls are looking for a continuation pop back above these 82s. Big slide back down. Nice little dip. All right, I'm going to jump ship on the pop. That dipped a little further than I wanted it to. I'll just accept the fact that it didn't get the bounce I wanted, that's for sure. If my first entry's average was better, I would be okay with holding it, but ugh. They're feisty. Let's see if we can get a new low underneath the 75s. My concern, obviously, is that we're rejecting off that POC again, and we have yet another lower high. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. Fat finger my shortcut keys. That's good. Notice the accident was to the long side. Good old Murphy still doing his thing. I never get the fat finger to the short side that works in my favor, you know? One of these days, Murphy. Back underneath that 681, lots of resistance coming in on the S&P as well, rejecting back lower. 945 around the corner. They're still getting really stuck on that 681. They got to break through it. They're trying. Uh-oh. That's not good. That's really good for the bulls, though. That's incredible for the bulls for a continuation breakout move. Very unlikely that it actually pulls back. I was going to say, there's almost no chance this thing's going to pull back to let buyers come in. I normally don't buy that far up. But with that kind of power move, you don't have a choice. It's not going to pull back. It's gone. Very nice blow up. I was only able to grab one, and that one was way high. Let's see if we can get a little bit of a snap back down again. That was that rejection back up. That was what needed to happen right there. Do you see that transition of power? We had this transition of power where we broke above, the POC was kind of hovering, bulls tried taking it but couldn't really get the job done, sellers tried taking it, couldn't get the job done, tried going up, hits it, closes on it, nice bear bar, looks like a fantastic bear move, loses her grip, goes up, transition of power, sellers are done. Game over. And then it just goes screaming higher. It happens very fast. Jeez. So we know sellers tried. We know sellers failed miserably. See if they're able to keep this thing going or not. The euro has a, although late to the party, potential long setup on the euro at 22.025. Shallow objective. You're looking at like 22.080s, 90s or so. Crude oil has a possible short underneath the bottom. I don't really know if I'd want to go short on crude, but it'd be at 67.90. I would rather, if I were going to short crude, I would rather sell it like 25. 68.25, not 67. S&P breaking above a new high. Excuse me. The bulls are trying. Gold also has a potential long, which would be above the most recent high, 11.7. Nice pullback here on the NASDAQ, but likely, given the strength of this pullback, it's going to be a two-legged pullback. POC smack at the top at 704. Yikes. S&P also has a potential scalpers opportunity. Like, I'd prefer like 6. I don't know if they're able to actually accomplish that, but... POC at the top equals profit and sellers coming in. That's kind of the concern, yeah. And we don't know whether or not it's new sellers or if it's profit taking from buyers. We don't know, right? There's no way to actually know that. But what we can do is we can gauge how much volume is coming in there, and if it's enough to shift the POC, well, then realistically, they've absorbed so much volume up at that high. Assumably, it's on the sell side. If it's going up and volume is increasing, right? We've talked about that before. Then the assumption is that it's selling volume. It might be profit taking. It might be new sellers. I don't know why, but if there's so much up there that it's coming in and shifting the POC up and the market's responding to it, then it's likely that there's so much selling pressure that the market has to come down to find more buyers to kind of equal it out, if that makes sense. Now, in this case, the sellers tried, right? We saw the sellers try. They held underneath that POC, beautiful drive to the downside, and then it failed and goes flying back to the upside. So what's the first thought process? I did not expect the sellers to fail here. So we're likely getting 2 legs to the upside. Done. Objective complete. So if I want to be a buyer, I certainly don't want to be a buyer way the heck up here after a major objective has just been accomplished. I mean, once I get the word out of my mouth, that wouldn't make any sense. So it makes a lot more sense now to expect a deeper pullback. And even if you weren't looking at that, the MACD is also demonstrating an undertow, saying that we should probably have a deeper pullback. It's actually been doing it for a while. So regardless of what we're looking for at the time, whether you're looking from the narrower perspective or the wider perspective, everything is saying a deeper pullback makes a bit more sense. And when you see a POC shift at the highs, you'd expect them to roll that down, and they failed. And that's where that surprise factor comes in. So given the fact that we've had 2 legs up, if it does want to go one more, it's probably going to be equal to that. And that would place upside objectives up to 722. And the big shift was when they broke back above the POC and the sellers gave up. Now they're clear for takeoff. And we can look at that in hindsight now that we do know it's a pullback. We don't have to have the initial leg up. We can just go from the top to the bottom and see where the majority of that value came in. And it was actually really top weighted up here. So if the market is going to pull back this next time around, it makes more sense for a slightly higher one around 682-ish. And you can see right now they're trying to bottom weight a POC. And the bulls, to be fair, if you were scalping that small little transition of power right there, I mean, that was good for, maybe 15, 20 ticks. So now that we've broken back above it, if the bulls are going to take it, this is what they needed. So as long as we stay above that POC and it doesn't go underneath it by too much, buyers will stay long. Their break point's probably underneath the lows. Very nice secondary long that's setting up there, that bull bar. See if that's enough juice to get the scalpers going to the upside. That was not enough juice to get the scalpers going to the upside. I'm going to jump ship. My concern, and the reason why I'm bailing so fast on that, is my concern for the deeper pullback. We're on the right side of the POC, but we've got to understand what's going on here. Everything is saying deeper pullback. So I'm not going to hold on to it, noting that I got in and I was immediately wrong. No thanks. I'm good with a -5. I'm okay with that. Give me another strong bull bar up, I'll just jump back in again. But I'm not going to chance it hovering around this POC unless we've got a heck of a lot of proof. Like here, a little trap down and then maybe a bull engulfing candle or something along those lines, a strong bull bar. Anything like that that's demonstrating persistent strength from the bull side will allow those buyers in. S&P tapped the entry at 6, but I didn't get a fill. Really? And now it's at the target area. Awesome. No fill for me on the S&P. I hate that that rhymes because it almost feels like it needed to happen now. Really strong bull bar back up. Good transition. See if we can get a little bit of a dip underneath the 98s or so. There we go. Nice little dip for scalpers to try to pick this dip back up for another pop higher. Again, short-term pops, but that's what they're going to be looking for is a break above these 699s, 700s. Pop above the high. There they go. Right through the top. That's what you're looking for right there, that transition in power. And they snap out. Now we've got another pullback. Now imagine, right, if you weren't able to grab that first one, where to pull back to? Buyers are rescaling in the same zone. Reattempt. Back up again. Got about 5 minutes until 10 o'clock. Feel free to get those questions in before we move into the extended session. S&P, you were so frustrating. NASDAQ only one contract. Okay. Well, hey, you know, it's working out. The euro is triggering in the longs above those highs and trying to get that going. Crude oil does have the potential short below the low at 67.90. Downside objective would be like 67.76. Gold's got an upside objective triggering in longs at 1911.7. Upside targets at like 14.1. Oh, euro upside target, sorry, 22.085. All right. Gigantic reversal back down. So this was the concern and why I was so sketched out over here. Now we're seeing it over here. It's a little bit late to the party is all. Big POC at the highs. Looking at previous value pullbacks, this last pullback in terms of measurement size was 0.18. This pullback was 0.22. Realistically, from a value perspective, we need to see at least 0.18, which is at 13,684. And notice what that lines up really nicely with 82 quarter, that previous POC back here. We've got that value pullback hovering right in that same spot. Really interesting. Okay. So from a strict swing perspective, buyers have an opportunity at 82 quarter. Realistically, they're not going to want to see it break down much. Likely below there. What kind of risk are we talking? Oh, I need a slightly better entry point. 81.50 would put my target at the highs. What about this cluster at 79? That would put my target in the L4. That would be perfect. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that, but 679 is the zone of interest. Gold has a potential long setting up from this area now that they've gotten a little bit of a dip and it's not forcing buyers to buy way the heck up at the top. So zone of interest on gold at 6.2 with upside objectives at like 7.8. All right. See what they want to do here. NASDAQ's pulling back a little bit further. 679 is the zone of interest for bulls to try to retest that previous area of interest. Objective area is going to be up at the highs, 690, I mean realistically 700s. And we are also hitting 10 o'clock. So 10 o'clock hits. We've got a few that are going on, a few that are kind of jumping around, and potential swing for the NASDAQ to the upside. That's gearing up with a more on the strict side for the stop at 6. I mean, realistically below the 670s. If it starts failing underneath that, it's kind of game over. So now we can transition over to the extended session. And actually, just a heads up too, it might take an extra second because my groceries just got here too. So give me a second. For the rest of you, I'm glad to have you here with me today. And hopefully you had a great day of trading. And we will see you all tomorrow. All right. For the rest of you in the VIP session or the extended session, hang tight and we will get that going. All right. Have a good one. We'll talk to you all later. Thanks. Bye. All right, I'll be right back. I have my groceries here. I'll be right back. 2 seconds. Okay. Sheesh. Sorry about that. And all right, taken out of the NASDAQ. Get that out of the way. More continuation to the downside, and obviously sellers have, at this point, really swarmed this thing to the downside. The overall POC, if we go from top to bottom, it's kind of in the middle. If we do everything, we're kind of hovering around it now. So the deep buyers are trying to buy down here. And if we zoom out from that perspective, we've got that L5 off of the lows, we've got the L2, got the L2, at the L2. If we're looking for a deeper pullback, usually they're going to go one more, L2 down to L3. They're holding so far. Nice bull pop to the upside. Big, strong rally, too. So we've already seen the POC shift to the downside, going across all these lows after the higher low. There they go. Whoops. All right. There we go. Whoops. Breaking back above the moving average cluster and also coming back to the previous POC zone of interest. Buyers will be looking to see if they can get a bounce off of this. More bullish continuation to the upside. Sellers are starting to get that shutdown a little bit here. Looks like in this case, what they do, double value pullback. So we've got the 0.18, 0.36 would be right here. Didn't quite make it. Bulls are still climbing this thing to the upside. It's like a tiny little V bottom that happened down there before it reversed back up. Bears look like they're trying to get something going. That could have potentially just got them stuck. Very nice sell side candle back to the downside again. And bulls reverse it right back up. That's terrible for sellers. Starting to look like a V bottom down here, just a little bit spaced out. Maybe on the 500 tick? Still barely have any candles on the 500 tick. Would love to see a dip down into the 675s. Fairly obvious divergence coming across the top. It went to 76. Okay. Got it. See if bulls can get a bit more continuation off of this, or if they're going to plot some kind of weird inside trappiness going on here in the 76s. Big flush back down. Are the bulls strong enough to get this to go back up? They need one more big new high above like the 690s. That's not it. Bulls are losing their grip. They've lost the POC now. Pop back up into the 75s. The POC's up a little bit further now, huh? A strong enough bear bar will potentially spark a downsided move if it triggers lower. I just don't want to sell this far down. I'm on 75. Doesn't look like it's going to matter, though. Nope. All the way down to a new low again. Tried to get that pop up there, but oh well. Made it to 74. Are you serious? I was looking for 75 before it hit 76, and I was looking for 75 again. It hit 74. I keep getting dodged by a point. That's not funny, and I don't appreciate it. Now, in the bigger picture, where are we? 0.36, exactly. This is where swings, especially on the option side, are going to be looking for longs. They're going to be looking for continuation bounces, looking for upside moves, looking for any reason they can to try to go long down here for a move back up to the highs. The POC doesn't help them, and it's super early. Like, we haven't even seen the market go sideways yet. But this is a big zone of interest for swings to get into the upside. We're in a double value pullback. If you still believe this is a bull trend, of course. Hard to say. And here it sits. So remember, we just hit a double value pullback and we saw a huge amount of support come in there. We definitely have to take note. On the S&P, they have a potential long setting up at 9.25. For a breakout move up to 11. Bitcoin catching a little bit of a pop. The euro is just dead sideways. There's nothing going on there. I really don't like 9/4. It's just buying so high, and we've got doji, bull bar, bear bar. Each one's failing. It might work. It's just, it seems kind of touch and go. Especially since they're not really moving very aggressively at all. S&P finding more selling pressure to the downside. Sellers having a bit of a hard time here. These 684.50 area is going to be much more interesting. They're starting to climb up into that area. Give me a nice overdrive up into that 684, 685. Uh-oh. That might be it. Mm-hmm. Bulls are trying to get this to reverse back up to the upside. Remember, in the bigger picture, this is that deeper L3 hold. We've also got the double value pullback. There's a lot of swings that are buying down here. Bulls attempting to come in. That's a really nice bull bar, but it's in the face of that nasty twin reversal that just happened. Market just kind of hovering so far. Nice. Really? Okay. How did I not get a... I hit ask when we hit that 84.50, but I didn't get a fill. I was like a nanosecond too slow. Okay. Can we get a pop back up to like 83s? There we go. All right, it's giving it a shot here. Looking for the seller's pressure back down underneath the 680s. Oh, what a beautiful bear bar. Seller's first objective off at the lows. See if they can push through the bottom at 680s. Beautiful flush. Nice. POC shift. Uh-oh. Oh, if the shorts were short, they might not be short anymore. If it breaks underneath that, the sellers are in and they just hit it hard. But right now it's staying above that POC shift. All right, they're underneath it. See how the sellers respond. We rejected off at 84.50. Now we've got a new one at 79.75. The last one on that rally higher was at 77, which we still are failing to get underneath. That just did it right there. Nice little push. Bulls will probably try to get something going, but this leg down is so strong that it'll likely have a secondary leg. No, I didn't start late for the trade. I had my groceries showed up. I get my groceries delivered, and they showed up this morning a little earlier than I thought, and so I had to close things down for a second to to get all of those. Back up into the 80 quarters. The S&P on the 5-minute, I mean, I like it. It looks nice. I was even looking at a potential breakout above the highs, go figure, on the S&P out of all of them. I have a really hard time buying way up here when the market's not really proving much. The sellers failed one side, so the bulls are more likely to go in the other direction, especially considering that we've got candle gapping to the upside. But that candle gapping, if we go from the bottom to the top, that completion is just a little bit further up to 1150. It doesn't have too much further to go. We'll see what they want to do. Possible transition in power here for the bulls on the NASDAQ. Wow, it just happened so fast. I couldn't do anything about it. Well, there it was. Couldn't really do much about it, but it was there. A little more continuation to the upside. And it's still just kind of creeping higher. No pullbacks. We did have that transition of power, which is right there. It happened so fast I didn't have a chance to respond. Completion of the S&P candle gap objectives. Just keeps on going to the upside. Not really getting the pullback, though. This thing's just dead slow. Dead slow in the sense that it's not pulling, but it just keeps grinding to the upside. That one-sided price action makes it really frustrating, especially when it does give you the setup, but it takes off in like a millisecond. And then after that, it takes 20 minutes for it to just climb the rest of the ladder. A little bit of a pullback down to at least the 695s. preferably lower, like a two-legged correction, 91s. Here it sits. Zone of interest, first off, is going to be back down here in the 91s or so. Actually, there's a really nice small little guy right there in the 95s. Narrow. They're putting in some serious volume up here. Measured leg to the upside is almost full completion. Meaning that if sellers were waiting for an opportunity to get in, this is the area that sellers are going to be getting in. So from the swing short perspective, remember we were talking about swing longs down here. This is where buyers on the call side, the option side, long-term trades are setting up. They're hitting their targets up here. Now we're in an area where long-term swing shorts are going to be coming in to try to push the market back down. They're playing ping pong. Very early. More likely than anything, given the movement on the NASDAQ, we probably see something like this first. So you're better off waiting for the lower highs. Meaning that the bulls still have plenty of reason to want to be buying the dips. Unless they shift the POC up here. That could cause some problems. And there it is. Right on cue. Perfect. Well, that's going to make that a bit awkward. Bitcoin is catching a very nice pop to the upside here. NASDAQ snapped right back to it just for a millisecond, but it's after they've already shifted the POC. I think given the response here, although if you did take a scalp there, it would have worked out nicely. I'd rather see it go down just a bit further to the 90s, the 690s. I think it's a more favorable location. Breaking back above the 690, 675. The double value pullback buyers, the swing longs, are still being rewarded with this continuation up. What a move. And here it sits. As we go into 10:30, it all quiets down. Bitcoin looking solid for more continuation to the upside. Also, Ethereum looking good for a continuation to the upside. Well, and then there's moves like that where, what was that, last week? Monday? It did that? Just didn't stop. ETH for the target. You talking about Ethereum or are you talking about ETH hours? So I'm never sure. Okay. So with crypto, the upside objective realistically at the moment, excuse me, would be, I mean, at least up into the 2770s. It depends on what time frame you want to zoom out to. If you're looking at a much larger time frame, like as an example, if you're looking at Ethereum on a 60-minute, the 60-minute perspective looks drastically different. I mean, obviously the buy zone down here at sub 2000 it's probably never going to come back. But as it stands, we're still kind of holding inside of this wedge. Hasn't really broken out of that yet. So all things considered, still got that to deal with. Upside objectives in the short terms around 2780s. If they can break above that, then I mean, then they've got all the way up to like 3,500. But so it depends on the perspective. On the 15-minute perspective, it's looking very strong. It's been looking very strong after they had the transition over here. POC down on the bottom side, they held, broke back up, higher low, continuation. Yeah. All right, NASDAQ. Two-legged correction down. Wasn't quite enough, though. The story of the day, huh? Jeez. Nice little 3-press wedge low down here. Come on, NASDAQ. One quick little pop down into those 690s. 3-press wedge low. That's a really nice bull bar. They shifted the POC to the upside at 700, so it's not enough. Not enough. A lot of buyers will start buying with this congestion, but I got to see a good overdrive here. A little bit of an overextension finalizing the move. That's a really strong bull bar. I'm going to pick one up here, but I still like the idea of trying to grab it a bit lower down at 690. The concern is that it's not going to have a chance to pull down that far, although it might. Hasn't made it. Still just at the bottom of the wedge. Okay. There we go. Nice quick little dip right back down into it. That's what buyers needed right there. Beautiful pop right down into it. Looking for the continuation push to the upside. Scalpers' objectives off there in the 693s. Next spot is going to see if they can climb back above the 695s towards those 700s. Keep on going, NASDAQ. 94s, 95s. This is a bottleneck here. We got to push through. Nice bull bars. Ooh, big pop. Beautiful. Right up there. POC shift to 696.75. Fantastic. They did push through. I was only able to grab 3, but if you do have more, the next objective would be back up towards the highs. I wouldn't want to target the high, though. Like the 700s, the 701s, that seems like it's okay. ES for the 5-minute? Yeah, but the S&P is cycling off of that major objective. That makes me nervous. I don't want to be the first one to the party buying after we've hit a major objective like that. Danger, Will Robinson. Back underneath the POC. Buyers held that initial bounce point, but they weren't able to get a whole lot more follow through. Oh, and another really strong bull bar back up is going to cause some serious problems. Bulls closing back above. They're trying to get more continuation. Hey, hey, welcome, welcome. You get a Pikachu. Welcome, welcome. Pardon my voice. Sellers pushing back down off that POC 696.75 and attempting to drive lower. I mean, we might have another test of the wedge, but honestly, if it's going to be another wedge low, then I would rather see something along these lines. And now they're starting to chop back up above that 696. Yikes. They're fighting. I don't think we've had a transition yet. They're getting real close, though. Here's a seller shot. The sellers just got swept right underneath that previous bull bar. Buyers will start buying based on that. I would still prefer to see a little bit more of a dip, but yeah, it's gone. Oh, maybe. Nope. As soon as I said something, what? Well, that wasn't even... That's not fair. That's not fair at all. All right. Well, on that note, it's 10:40. Yeah, in the positive, although we've had to fight for it. I'll take it. Fine. Let's do final call for questions. We'll wrap it up. And then we'll head off into the rest of the day. Ethereum and Bitcoin continue to climb higher. Ethereum's getting close. We got that wall of resistance just overhead. Can you give some market info on the nature of CL? Well, one of the first things that you've got to really understand about crude oil, in and as a whole. I don't know how you would actually refer. Whatever. Crude oil is a very emotional market. In the nice thing about crude oil is that you don't necessarily have to worry about U.S. news or like non-farm payrolls or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, it'll wiggle the markets around a little bit, obviously, but it has less of an impact. So the nice thing about crude is that you don't have to focus on that many things of news, but it is very emotional. An example, go back, not too long ago when it was trading at negative $40. You heard that right. If you missed that, negative $40. That happens. I didn't know that could happen. There were a couple of brokers that I talked to that even said they didn't know that could happen. But sure enough, it happens. It's a very emotional market. Now, if you're on the right side of things, that's fantastic. If you're on the wrong side of things, it's a very difficult market to build into without deep, deep pockets or spreading your orders out very wide. The cool thing about crude, and let me see if I can, let me use, sure. I don't care which one. This is not color linked, right? No, okay. Crude oil. The 125 tick is going to be, I don't know, actually. Maybe the 125 tick will be good. All right. 125 tick on crude. This is irrelevant. This is irrelevant. Okay. We might have hit the nail right on the head, huh? 125 tick. So one thing that you'll notice about crude is that when it picks a direction and it decides to trend, it trends really well. It's very similar to, I don't remember if you ever traded the soybeans markets or any of the ags. It's been a while. I think you have, or at least you've looked at them before. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's very similar to soybeans in that mentality, where if it is going to pick a direction, it usually goes in that direction for quite a while, and it takes a lot to get it to reverse. And this is a really good example of that, where if you look at this overall move to the upside, it keeps going and going and going, and it took ages for this thing to reverse. It took forever. And then it finally goes back down. Same with down here. By the time it finally decided to start reversing, it took like 4 hours before it finally started to actually go. And it still hasn't even really completed the objective. It's a beautiful market for a trend type trading system or a trend type trader, because when it goes in a trend, it usually doesn't stop. And when it's range bound, it usually goes in the direction of the trend that came before. So if it's a range and there was a bear trend before that, then you typically want to look to go short. That's just kind of its personality. The other side of things, when it comes to crude, because it is such a highly emotional market, is that traders will tend to trade very large initially. So you'll see big size, big size might be relative speaking as far as crude's concerned. It might just be, 2 or 3 contracts. But relatively speaking, you'll see, decent size throughout the day when there's not necessarily anything going on. But they are not shy about stacking some insane clusters of volume, depending on if it's in a nice spot. So let me see if I can find an example here. The POCs that are really obvious are usually going to be around those major levels of prices. So 60, we just haven't been around one for a while. I mean, there's 67 right there, I guess, but they didn't shift the POC down there. Usually you'll see that type of response when it's at like 65 or 70 or 60 or something of those very obvious numbers. 65's close. Right there. Yeah, they did it at 65.04. And that's what I mean by it's just mountainous. It's nowhere even close to the rest of them. The other ones are down here. This is like twice as much. Any recommendations on scalpers targets in ticks? I don't recommend using targets based in ticks in a hard tick standpoint, except for something like the S&P, which has over decades moved in 1 point moves. That's just kind of what it does. But I mean, if I had to, I wouldn't want to take any less than like 10. 10 would be kind of the minimum. But it depends on the volatility that day. 10 ticks might actually be quite a bit some days, and 10 ticks might not be anything the next day. So that is a little bit of a concern from that perspective. You know, like a 125 tick, that's going to be difficult to get away with. I would rather utilize price action and structure to validate targets. So as an example, just looking at today's price action, we had a really strong reversal to the downside. That strong reversal to the downside held off of an L1 and 2. Both of them held very frequently. So the next push to the downside, you've got another L1 that hit right there. You've got that one missed all the way down. So it's L1, 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 L1. The next time it gets back to L2 is going to be the sell side and their objectives down to the lows. So, I mean, it's a very trendy market. It's very nice when it sets up. You just got to be patient for it to set up properly. And typically, you're better off using structure for both your targets and your stops rather than fixed areas. Even if you're a scalper, very frequently, especially on crude. Let's look at like a 5-minute without any of the hullabaloo. Just a 5. One thing you'll see very frequently, especially on crude, is these half to ones that we always talk about. So as an example, if I were a seller underneath this bear bar, a scalper would have an opportunity at a half to one objective, and then other traders would be looking for 2 to 1s to the downside. So what you'll notice a lot of times is that these objectives, these targets, will create massive areas of interest because a lot of traders, given the fact that it's crude oil and you're not trading thousands of contracts at every level, a lot of traders will respond the exact same way in the exact same spot. This is a market where front running is crucial. Very, very important to be a front runner on crude. You can see if you actually plot it the way that it's supposed to, that would have been the to the tick bottom until way over here. And I know me personally, I wouldn't have been able to sit through all that, and I probably would have let go of it up here just to see it roll all the way back down. So for me, this is one that I almost always exclusively front run. Make it a point to front run on crude oil or any of those more psychological markets like that. Agricultural markets are the same way. Yeah, no problem. Like, the same can be said for the S&P. We know that this is a major objective up here at 42.1150, but it's got to bounce off it like 18 times because it's the S&P. You know, crude oil hits it once and it's gone. With all the orders yesterday, how does it balance out with commissions being charged? I know myself, I was charged a ton yesterday. Oh yeah, for sure. I got absolutely annihilated as far as commission costs go. Yesterday wasn't a good day in general. I ended the day in the negative even after trying to get the market to rally back up. But if I look at the numbers, today's the 2nd. The 1st was a holiday. Yesterday was Monday. What's the 1st? Just the 1st. Jeez. Yeah, I got absolutely railed on commission cost. The NinjaTrader doesn't factor in the commissions, but yesterday I had 136 trades. So you figure each one, just on a commission rate, is, depending on your broker, $3 to $5. It wasn't cheap. Interestingly enough, from a math perspective, just looking at yesterday's trades, it's not something I usually do from 1-to-1, but yesterday was a very difficult day, and it was very frustrating, and I had a heck of a lot of trades yesterday, which does mean that I definitely overtraded a little bit, but I had a build into exit with a 3x build, so it makes sense that there was a lot more size there anyway. But regardless, you can still take those numbers and figure out what your trader's math is and ensure that your trader's math is appropriate. Make sure I don't want any dollars and cents on there. I don't care about those. I just want to see the numbers. So 163.97 minus 100. 36.03 are the losses. The average losing trade is 52. And 63.97 times the average winning trade of 29. So you can see my math yesterday worked out to be break even. That's about what it ended up being. After commissions, it was definitely negative. But generally speaking, from a tick ratio, it was close to break even, which means that I wasn't out of bounds with my trading strategy. I stuck with my numbers. A negative 18. Normally, my by the end of the week, it should be negative 1,000. This week's going to be a lot more because I had a week's worth of trades in one day. So this week, that number might be a little bit different, but I can figure out where I'm at this week, and I'm at a negative 18. So from a numbers perspective, I know that I'm trading it appropriately. It might not feel great, and it might have felt like yesterday I just kept repetitively getting my teeth kicked in, but I know that from a strategy standpoint, I approached it correctly. That's what it comes down to. The commission cost is just part of business and nothing you can do about it. If you do have a lot of trades, though, you can definitely work out deals with your broker. Be like, yo, I'm putting a Porsche worth of commissions on your plate every day, all right? So, or maybe not every day, but like the least you can do is cut me a 20-cent break or something, you know? You can usually work out some deals if you're throwing size. But even then, I mean, all right, big slide back to the downside. I don't really want to put anything else to risk. It's just been kind of a sorted day. I feel like it's been it's actually been a good day. It just feels like it's been kind of meh because today, how many times did I get missed? I got no-filled on the S&P twice. I got missed on the NASDAQ by a point on both sides, on the long and the short. So that's probably why I'm more psychologically exhausting than anything else, is just understanding, talking out loud as to what's going on today. Today is another one of those days where if I were evaluating myself, I don't know that I would want to trade into the afternoon. I don't typically trade in the afternoon anyway, but just throwing it out there, it's if you do trade into the afternoons, it's a good idea to do a quick little eval like that. Like, am I good? Maybe I need a break. We'll reevaluate after the break. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to trade anymore. I don't want to put any more risk on the table. I'll call it a day. Hopefully you all had a great day of trading. It was a little bit choppy, a little bit sloppy, and slowed down and kind of vindictive, but all in all, I guess we made it work in the end. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll get those covered for you from there. Otherwise, though, that'll do it. Enjoy the rest of the day. Rest up, and we will see you all tomorrow morning, all right? Have a good one. We'll talk to you all later. Thanks.